Hello, thank you all that are on to join us for our January 2023 2022 Wrapped webinar. So got a little tongue-tied on that one, but that is what we're here to discuss. We're going to look back at 2022 and what we heard from you, and then most importantly, focus on what we're doing about it in 2023. So before I start with introductions, I would like to go over a few logistical reminders. We are recording today's webinar, so anyone who registered, whether you're joining us live or not, will get a link to the recording of it within 24 hours. We don't have the chat opened up we don't have the audio opened up for you to ask questions, but we have the chat open and ready to go. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please toss them in the chat and we'll answer them as we're able. If we don't get to your questions in the webinar itself, someone will follow up with you with an answer. So the format we will follow for this webinar is a conversation between myself, Drew, and Bernard. So we sincerely enjoyed talking about these topics, but we will have to keep the conversation going to leave time for your questions. So we hope this is at least a good introduction to what we're discussing. And if you want to talk with us further, don't hesitate to reach out. All right, so now moving on to introductions. I'll start by passing it over to Drew Ivan to introduce himself, and then to Bernard, and then I'll introduce myself before we get started.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here. I'm Drew Ivan, the Chief Strategy Officer at Lineate.
Hey, folks. Thank you for joining us. I'm Bernard Echeverry, Senior Director of Professional Services and Education at Lineate.
Awesome. Thanks, gentlemen. And my name is Shelly Waymeyer. I am the Director of Product and Partner Marketing for Lineate. And we're excited to share with you today the top things we heard from our customers in 2022. And then we'll wrap up with what we're doing about it in 2023. So we've categorized what we learned from you into these 3 points. We hear from you that many of your organizations are trying to do more with less. You're scaling and you're taking on more work, but your teams aren't necessarily growing. And as a result, we see an increase in requests from our customers who want to migrate to the cloud and are seeking creative ways to augment their staff. We've also heard that you're thinking beyond data exchange. You're seeking to enrich data to create value and efficiency out of the data you've been exchanging and collecting at an increasing pace since the pandemic. And then finally, we see that we hear from our customers that you are increasing the number of data trading partners that you're working with, and you're onboarding new data sources at an increasing rate. So this means we have heard that you are turning towards APIs, adopting APIs to modernize and scale securely and efficiently. So those are the 3 topics we're going to anchor today's discussion around. Sound good, Drew and Bernard?
Yes, let's jump in.
All right, well, let's go ahead and jump in. Actions speak louder than words, right? And so just by sheer numbers alone, we have seen in 2022 over 33 customers be onboarded by our cloud operations team to a Lineate cloud solution. I was wondering if Drew, you can help put these numbers into perspective for the audience.
Yeah, we saw the cloud really take off in 2022. I mean, it was obviously not started in 2022, but that seems to be the year where it really took off. By way of contrast, in 2018, even before Rhapsody and CorePoint were together in one company, each integration engine had its own offering in the cloud, and we both deployed our first cloud customers in 2018. So 4 years ago in 2018, we had one customer each in the cloud. By the end of 2022, we had 118. So it's still less than 10% of our total customer base in our cloud, but very, very fast year-over-year growth. And what this number doesn't capture is how many of our customers have installed our products in their own cloud. And so that, if you include that number, it's even higher. So I think what we've seen in the past 4 years, and especially in the past year or two, is fast growth in cloud adoption for integration.
I know, Bernard, you were quite involved in some of the early stages of planning for our customers' success with the migration. Have you seen that come to life, or what's been your experience from the professional services side?
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely seeing from a delivery standpoint, the increasing momentum and the shift towards the cloud and those initiatives. I remember thinking back to 2017, 2018 era at Connect, walking around with this hat on my head to identify myself as a cloud explorer. I'm not going to put it on today, sorry, but to disappoint anyone. But for those of you that were there at Connect that year, you probably remember that. And to think that we had a customer at that time in the cloud, and now we've got 118 and counting, and even signed more this month. We're definitely seeing that from a utilization standpoint, and we're aligning our services appropriately to prepare to scale out in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember being on this webinar in May of 2022, and we were excited to announce that CorePoint as a service was ready for customer adoption, and that with that, we were releasing the cloud migration services and the methodology that our professional services team and cloud team had built to ensure seamless onboarding. And gosh, it feels like yesterday, but even since May, right? We've onboarded so many customers using that methodology. One point we really wanted to talk about too is like why are our customers coming to us for cloud solutions? Why are customers migrating to the cloud? What have you seen for what's been the motivators to make the move?
For one thing, I mean, it's time. Healthcare was slow to adopt the cloud for good reason. I mean, healthcare data is protected at a very high level, and to put that data someplace that's accessible by public networks is something that you don't do lightly. And so the healthcare industry as a whole moved to the cloud rather conservatively. But I think I think the public cloud infrastructure providers have proven that they have a high level of security and capability and high levels of uptime over years and years now. And so for one thing, it's proven to be a safe place to put healthcare data. But for another thing, I mean, I think the pandemic really accelerated the cloud adoption, because if you have an on-prem data center, but you have a lockdown, nobody can go into the data center to maintain those servers. Or if they can, it's at a much lower capacity than they could under normal times. So if you have to sit at home and maintain your data center remotely, you may as well sit at home and maintain a cloud data server remotely. And so that made a lot of sense. It's also much more scalable, flexible, and nimble to spin up new servers in the cloud. So some of those benefits really were driven by the needs that the pandemic put on us.
Yeah, in addition to that, all great points. I think we are seeing some of the impact of the shift, like the Great Resignation that that everyone was talking about, in which our client base is needing to do more with fewer people, oftentimes. And part of that is as Drew mentioned, right, consolidating their various enterprise platforms in the cloud, removing the need for that that heavy infrastructure presence. And also, they need people that are able to attend to those, especially with regards to interfaces and interoperability, people that can attend to those solutions and make sure that A, they're maintaining their day-to-day business as usual, but also B, they're continuing to meet the needs, right? Just because there's a pandemic doesn't mean that organizations are stopping their growth and initiatives to expand. And certainly, we've seen a lot of customers that have started during the pandemic specifically to address the needs of the healthcare system.
And that makes me think too. I remember at Connect this year, having some side conversations, and people are like, "So is my job at risk?" And it was like, we haven't seen that at all from our customers who are looking for ways to be more efficient through the cloud offering and other types of staff augmentation. It's that there's been no staff reductions. It's just a matter of keeping up with the onslaught of work with the same size teams, or figuring out how to use these like much coveted skill sets in healthcare IT in ways to do more with the data. We've heard that from a few customers recently. So I think another Another point I wanted to hit with you gentlemen is thinking about the fact we also have some customers who cannot move to the cloud yet. Reasons we've seen for that may be that they're sticking with VPNs, a huge amount of VPNs for some reason. They want to control and maintain their servers, and they can do that because they have large networking and infrastructure teams in place that they don't need to reallocate to other work. Drew, do you want to talk a little bit about how we speak to our flexible deployment options?
Sure. And we have this great slide that sort of shows the spectrum of options. Obviously, all the products that we have been in the market a long time. And as a result of that, they were born in an on-prem world. And we haven't taken away that capability. All of our products still run just fine on-prem. But we have due to the demand we just talked about, we needed to have cloud offerings as well. And so we have a variety of different levels of cloud service to suit pretty much every style that our customers are looking for. At one extreme, we can still deploy on-prem or in a customer's cloud. And so that's the column on the right. The orange figures represent the customer, and the blue is the Lineate team. All the way at the extreme, we can basically allow customers to deploy our software in their own cloud or on-prem, just like they've done for years. And then we can work up from there. So we can deploy Rhapsody, CorePoint, and our other solutions as a hybrid solution, or we can provide interoperability as a service. We can deploy the virtual machine and the software, and then allow our customers to log in and configure it, all the way to the leftmost extreme, where we take care of everything from installing and managing the software all the way through configuring and operating it. And it's a matter of where our customers want to draw the line in terms of balance between their effort and ours.
Yeah, absolutely. And throughout that entire continuum of deployment options that Drew outlined, our professional services teams and education teams and support teams are available to help, with any of those customer journeys to ensure success in all of those.
Absolutely. We've gotten a few questions on this topic while we've been talking. One of them was about how updates to CorePoint are handled in the cloud, and would a customer even be aware when updates occur? And yes, we do make our customers aware. We can manage those upgrades, and then we schedule them for release and notification, of course, before that gets pushed out. And of course, there's different types of upgrades. So we have a detailed process that details what the expectations are for you based on the type of upgrade or patch that's being pushed, so you know what to expect.
Yeah, and there's certainly a lot of one of the key considerations whenever a client is looking at doing a major upgrade, to any other platforms, but especially an integration engine. They want to make sure they're not going to break anything with their existing interfaces, because those are often the hub of all of their data flow, both clinical and otherwise. So the impact is pretty large if something breaks. So one of the ways we've been engaged from a services standpoint for upgrades, and certainly we could also be engaged in this manner across any of these deployment options, is to help with a pre-upgrade validation process, where we go in and either do a comprehensive review and analysis of the pre and post upgrade data flow, or we could do highlighted spot targeted investigative analysis to determine if there's any work that needs to be done in advance of an upgrade.
Awesome, thank you, Bernard.
Sure.
We had two other questions come up. Quickly hit on them, and then I'll also shamelessly plug that next month in February, we will have our webinar focused on cloud migration and our cloud migration methodology, and it'll go into a bit more technical details, specifically on our as-a-service offerings and how we handle security, redundancy, connectivity. So please, I encourage you to join in February or register, and you can get a recording of that sent to you. One of the questions that I think we'll have time to hit here was about connectivity to the cloud in maybe remote or more rural locations. We do have options available that could be a good fit there. We've worked with a company that lets us deploy an on-device, an on-premise device that connects to the cloud, and that's been a successful solution for some in that situation. So we're interested in learning more about the challenges you've had and to see if that's a good fit. So we'll be in touch. Okay, keeping us moving. I knew it'd be tough to time box these 3 topics. Let's talk about the second thing we learned from our customers in 2022, which was the evolution from data liquidity to data enrichment. We've heard and talked quite a bit at our Connect event about some humbling statistics about how 86% of nurses, physicians, and IT practitioners have witnessed or know of a medical error caused by patient misidentification, according to a EHR consumer satisfaction survey. We also learned from a study that 76% of all lab data is not mapped to the standard LOINC coding. And we understand from our customers that there's this increased awareness that you don't want to be introducing risk through disconnected systems as you're onboarding more and more data sources, including non-traditional healthcare data sources and working with non-traditional healthcare data. So you're being asked to do more with the data and want us to help you ensure that you're still operating on a healthy data foundation. Drew, do you want to speak to a little bit about what you've learned from our customers regarding this goal?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we've been working on this problem a long time in terms of moving data between and among systems. And that involves a number of steps. And one of them is just connecting the 2 systems together. And then the next one is mapping data fields from the source system to the destination system. And the turning point that we've reached is that we're starting to think about how do we make sure that that both systems agree on the meaning of the data in those fields. And this is obviously something that you can solve through manual effort. As part of the interface, you can make sure that the same coding systems are in use or manually map them. But we're starting to get better tools that can help us map different code sets, and that's where our health term capability comes in. It's got the code sets built in and helps to build to map from one code set to another, which is, you know, it's an important, much more important problem now, because as we start to move to a place where the standards are increasingly specific about the code sets you can use, we're finding that a number of systems that are out there just aren't using those code sets, and there needs to be that translation layer. So you know, that can either be a manual process or it can be automated through technology.
What about you, Bernard? Are you seeing much come through the way of the projects that your team's working on?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the things that we hear often from our customers, you know, they originally, especially those that, you know, start with an integration engine as part of their solution suite, right? They buy it to achieve certain specific objectives, right? We're implementing a new EHR and we're replacing the old one, and we're replacing our engine and modernizing and rebuilding all of our interfaces while we do that. And then once during the course of those projects, you know, their senior leadership teams get a better understanding of what our integration engine solutions are capable of, and how quickly and easily they can leverage those to further enrich the data or further add to their identity management workflows, and many other, you know, use cases. They're getting asked, you know, to sit in on more of those strategic initiative meetings and discussions, and actually take part in architecting and deploying those solutions. So it's definitely great to see those type of activities.
Definitely. I like the way I've heard you put it, Drew, and I've borrowed a few times about how a person navigating the healthcare system, whether that's a clinician or a patient or a consumer outside the walls of the care facility, like doesn't recognize that they're hopping like from system to system, right? They're just a patient. They're just going through their day-to-day and what they have to do to receive the healthcare they need. And so they don't see themselves as these separate entities moving, right? It's just that person. So like being able to architect a data flow that is representative of how that person expects to be treated and they expect their data to go with them, means we have to do work on the back end to do that reconciliation in a safe way.
Yeah, there's in healthcare, especially if you think of like an inpatient setting, there's a lot of handoffs between one care provider and the next, between departments and between individual clinicians. And oftentimes those handoffs are mirrored in the data flow between systems. For example, a patient may be admitted to the emergency department and taken to the radiology lab for an X-ray, and then admitted to an inpatient ward. And there's probably 3 different systems for those 3 different settings, and data flows between them along with the patient, which is great. But healthcare systems are beginning to stop thinking in terms of the departments and the software that supports them, and starting to put the patient at the center. And as you change your frame of reference from the operational flow to the patient, that really gets you thinking about what does the data really have to say about this patient as it's moving around. And so that's where we introduce the concepts of properly identifying the patient with a unique and enriched patient record, and then making sure that all the transactions about that patient are machine readable and not just something that a system can put on a screen for a person to read. If the system can actually understand at least some of the data that's in that message, then you can deliver much better care for that patient.
Right, it's taking that phrase of like right data at the right time in the right hands, and kind of it's like not just the right data, but like in the way that that person needs to consume it and can understand it.
Right.
One of our partners and customers that's using both the Lineate EMPI and Rhapsody in their patient engagement consumer application kind of said the same. I won't read his quote, which we have on the screen, but they hugely credit the work that Rhapsody and EMPI does in the background to aggregate data and then what they do to curate it for the patient experience. So it's a critical piece of their technology stack. And I'd like to also kind of go back to what you said, Bernard, about how we're seeing customers and our traditional users, like in our engines, be a part of the table as organizations are figuring out how they mature their architectures to achieve this semantic interoperability and reconcile these systems, and the role professional services has been playing in those strategic conversations. Do you have any other anecdotes you'd like to share before we switch topic on how professional services partners with our customers in that way?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. We've got a couple of really cool use cases that I was talking to Jose Lemus, one of the solution architects on the implementation team, about what has he seen recently with regard to FHIR workflows in particular, and how clients are enabling solutions with FHIR. We've got a public health department that wanted to stand up an immunization repository where any citizen with recorded immunizations could log in via their mobile app. And we're going to see more and more of that as a proliferation of patient engagement via mobile technology really takes hold in the healthcare industry. Basically, they're extracting the patient data from the client registry in JSON format, building out FHIR patient resources and sending those FHIR patient resources over through the Rapid Gateway, the Lineate Rapid Gateway, which calls the API to the FHIR server to create the patient resource in the FHIR repository. Then they extracted the immunization records from the existing registry and basically were able to combine that information so that for every patient in the FHIR repository, they now have the immunization data that is accessible from those client apps that are on the phones of the patients. So some really cool use case there with FHIR and the Rapid Gateway.
Yeah, I love that story. And also it reminds me of how so many of our customers, as they've been looking at our API gateway, it seems to be along that same line of how can we be more efficient? Like we need to scale and we need to start working with APIs. We can't like employ a whole new team. We can't necessarily go procure some giant API management platform. So figuring out how we can help them with our API gateway extension of the engine to leverage the same tool they know and love, CorePoint or Rhapsody, but now in a bigger way, right? Like using it to unlock what you just described, you know, turning on an API gateway, turning on a Fire server, but all still through Lineate and through this partnership we already have, the relationships, the support teams that are already in place. On that note, like what have you seen in the industry, Drew, about customers looking to gain efficiencies through consolidation of vendors? Like what's driving customers to want to do that?
Yeah, there's two forces working in opposite directions here. You know, on one hand, a way to become more efficient is to automate workflows through technology. That very often means bringing in new vendors into the environment in your IT department. When you bring in a new vendor, it means, you know, a new security questionnaire process that they have to go through, contracting, a new relationship with a new support organization. There's just a lot of complexity as you expand the number of vendors. And so on one hand, you know, you want as many automated tools as possible. On the other hand, you would also prefer to do that through a limited number of vendors to simplify the administrative management of all those relationships. So you want your IT environment to be as simple as possible, but no simpler. And so we're seeing a lot of organizations that have grown the number of systems they have in use, partly due to the pandemic, partly due to other competitor pressures. But they're taking a step back now and rationalizing their environment and trying to discover, are there applications that they could do without, or maybe there's multiple applications that overlap in a way that they could eliminate some of them. So we're starting to see that be a trend among our customers, is taking a close look at the vendors that they're working with.
Yeah, in addition to that, you know, in anticipation of seeing more consolidation in that regard, we're spending a considerable amount of time and energy focusing on how can we synergize the effects of the combination of the various platforms in the Lineate interoperability suite, taking a lot of time to talk among the teams and cross-train among products for familiarization, and look at ways where we can really expedite implementation, where we're, especially in instances where we've got customers who have already purchased one of our solutions and is now adding another, or net new customers who are purchasing multiple of our solutions to implement as the broader suite.
Awesome. All right. Well, keeping us moving along here, thank you, Bernard and Drew, for your perspectives. We've talked a bit already about the use of APIs and how we've extended our API gateway from the engine, but we can't leave this webinar without talking about what we heard from our customers about how they're using APIs in 2022. One little marketing indicator of this being a hot topic was our July 2022 webinar had 10 times as many registrants, 4 times as many live attendees, and 5 times as many on-demand video views as compared to typical webinar engagement. Well, we saw a lot of traction come from that one, where I presented with Damian Leopard and Caitlin Formal about what the industry is predicting regarding API adoption in healthcare, and then where we're seeing it come in as a reality last year and this year, and post-pandemic acceleration of connecting data sources and doing more with that data. All right, so what we've heard from our customers is how can we help them keep up with new data types and the increasing pace of data integrations. Maybe we'll start again with you, Drew, and what you've seen through your strategy and product conversations, and then hear from you, Bernard, from the services side.
Yeah, I think APIs are taking off for 2 reasons. The first reason is that you know, we have the Fire APIs in healthcare that are now mandated across a variety of settings, and the past 12 to 18 months has been a period of rapid adoption of those FHIR API capabilities. So that's one vector along which FHIR adoption is improving. But the other one is healthcare integrations are beginning to involve what we would consider non-traditional software systems. They're starting to reach out to customer relationship management software or supply chain software. And if you think a CRM is going to be able to exchange HL7 messages with your EMR, that's wishful thinking. I mean, all of those non-healthcare systems have API-based integrations. And as that data becomes increasingly relevant to healthcare workflows, in order to integrate them, we have to do API-style integrations. And so that's something that's new as well. Going back to what we talked about earlier, as we start to focus more on patient flow and putting the patient at the center of healthcare, it starts to bring in, a lot of data from other systems that is not in the registration system or the EMR or the billing system. And so those integrations happen through APIs. So between FHIR and non-traditional healthcare data, those are two big drivers of API adoption in the recent past.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's not uncommon these days to get into conversations with, new prospects and existing customers that have a need to integrate with a non-traditional system, CRM systems, for example. We're seeing more and more of that type of activity, and our team has successfully helped integrate our interoperability engines to Salesforce. We're also seeing, that type of technology being utilized to help scale faster. For example, we have a client that operates hundreds of outpatient therapy locations, and they have a self-hosted FHIR registry. Their workflow manages patient demographics, medical conditions, insurance coverage, and appointment scheduling. And those workflows are really enabled via Lineate Solutions, the integration engine on the front end, where it's connecting via more traditional, heavier protocols like HL7 V2 when the patient comes into a clinic and makes their appointment. And the engine will then use the APIs to the FHIR repository to check to see if a patient exists, create them if they don't, update them if they do, and then create the schedule. And then that third-party system will come out, query the FHIR repository to populate a patient portal where the patients can confirm their information and cancel or update the appointments again, extending the reach of the technology out into the hands of the patient. So we're going to see more and more of that, I think, as time goes by.
Absolutely, thank you. And now I'll start to land this plane. If you have any other questions, throw them in the chat. We've already woven it into the conversation thus far, but let's talk a little bit about what we're doing with everything we learned from our customers this past year. So we really are doubling down on what we do to make your cloud migrations and other projects as smooth as possible. Well, we're delivering identity and terminology management solutions integrated with our integration engines to help you make the most of your data and add efficiency to what you need to do to operate. We're providing an API gateway in education services that help future-proof your teams and your architecture for an accelerated and secure API adoption, putting the person in the center of those architectures. I'm going into a little bit more depth. I mentioned next month we will have a webinar focused on our cloud journey methodology. We've also been creating some guides. So there's a guide out on our website that for attending this webinar, you'll get emailed a link to it that talks about how we think about moving health data integrations to the cloud. And then if you engage with us on one of those projects, we also have been working to create and roll out a preferred connectivity method guide that talks through how we can make that migration as smooth as possible, seamless as possible. And some of that will be discussed next month as well. And then to bring this to a close, I want to offer up a visual that shows how we're thinking about a person-centric architecture that's thinking holistically beyond exchanging the data, but also reconciling that person data and reconciling clinical codes across the sources. ensuring a gateway and a FHIR server, an authentication server where needed, to broker that information on its way in and out. Any final notes or any final questions?
Yeah, I'll just point out that this slide, I mean, it's probably not new thinking to anyone, because when we think about integration at scale at the enterprise level, there are a lot of capabilities that need to exist. And it's a little bit different for every enterprise, but this is sort of a prototypical one where we have, capabilities to do FHIR, data storage, API handling, traditional HL7 DICOM, code translation, person identity matching. All of these are capabilities that we've realized through different products in our portfolio. But we're starting to think that the product-centric approach is maybe not the best one. And what we really want to think of is the higher level here of what are our customers trying to do and what capabilities do they need, and how do we best supply those capabilities. And this is the type of diagram that we always knew our customers were making these as they began their interoperability journey. But now we're starting to think in the same terms, more so than the siloed product perspective we've had in the past. So this is a transformation we started, in sort of the second half of 2022, as we learned more about how our customers were using our products. And so it's been an evolution for us. And 2023 is going to be the year where we really push that forward and start to build this into everything we do.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
All right. Drew, Bernard, can't thank you enough for your time in preparing for this webinar. It's officially been 1 year of the Lineate Marketing webinars. They're all hosted on our website if you want to go see what we've been talking about this past year. And we look forward to speaking with you in the upcoming year.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.